You see, when you take matters in your own hands, and let's say, you got some of these guys who have gone out, well-meaning people, but they bombed an abortion clinic. Well, I hate to tell you, anybody in here thinking of doing that, that's one of the dumbest things you can do. Because not only they just going to get their insurance money and build a bigger, better abortion clinic, but that's God's place, not your place. And you're basically telling the world you don't trust the judgment of God. I've got to take matters in my own hands. So then you're taking it upon yourself to blow things up because you don't think God's going to come through. That's the opposite testimony we want the world to see. We tell the world, hey, we're not taking up arms and we're not blowing up people and things. We are going to trust God to do the right thing. And so then in verse 8, then we come to that conclusion. Read that with me. Charity never faileth, but whether there be prophecies, they shall fail. Whether there be tongues, they shall cease. Whether there be knowledge, it shall vanish. Charity doesn't fail even though everything else will. And he says, but whether there be prophecies, they shall fail. Tongues, they shall cease. Knowledge, it shall vanish away. Why? Well, think about it. When Jesus Christ returns, these things won't be necessary anymore. It's just a simple matter that love will never fail and these other things will. And beginning of verse 9, he explains that. In verse 9 he says, for we know in part and we prophesy in part, but when that which is perfect is come, then that which is in part shall be done away. That which is perfect is Jesus Christ. And when that which is perfect, Jesus Christ, returns, these other things will be done away. Now, turn over to 1 John chapter 2, or 1 John chapter 1. And you see there that it says, that which is perfect. And so folks will say, well, that doesn't look like it's referring to Jesus. Well, read verse 1 here with me. That which was from the beginning, which we have heard, which we have seen with our eyes, which we have looked upon, and our hands have handled of the word of life. That's talking about Jesus Christ. And that which is perfect, in reference here, is Jesus Christ. And when He returns, these other things will be done away. But through it all, remember, charity never faileth. Beginning in verse 11, he explains this a little more, and he says, when I was a child, I spake as a child, I understood as a child, I thought as a child, but when I became a man, I put away childish things. For now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then shall I know even as also I am known. Now look at 2 John. If you kept your finger there, 2 John. And look at verse 12. And read that with me. Having many things to write unto you, I would not write with paper and ink, but I trust to come unto you and speak face to face, that our joy may be full. From this text, in comparison with the other, we can see one thing is that he's not talking about paper and ink being that which is perfect is come. And he refers to seeing them face to face. And he's talking about literally face to face speaking with them. And back in 1 Corinthians 13 he says, but then face to face, and he's referring to not paper and ink, but a face that you will face. And that face is the face of Jesus Christ. And that's why we sing, when I look upon His face, the one who saved me by His grace. So we have this comparison between the things that will pass and that which remains, being charity, and all these other things, once Jesus Christ returns, they will pass away because their necessity and need will be gone, and yet love will remain. Love remains. And that's why then we sum it up in verse 13. Read that with me in 1 Corinthians 13, verse 13. And now abideth faith, hope, charity, these three. but the greatest of these is charity. And in closing, I just want us to look at that wonderful verse in John chapter 3. The definition of love, 1 John says, God is love. And God has demonstrated His love toward us in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. And in John chapter 3 and verse 16, read that with me. For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in Him should not perish, but have everlasting life. Now in that very verse, you see love and hate. Those who do not believe in Jesus Christ will perish because God hates sin. And those who of their own free will choose not to believe in Jesus Christ and what He's done on the cross, they have chosen to be cast into a lake of fire and perish. We've said this over and over. No one goes to hell because God sent them there. Everyone who ends up in hell goes there because they chose to go there by rejecting this act of love, the greatest act of love ever known to man. God Himself coming and becoming a man in order to die on the cross. A God who is perfect. A God who is sinless for a people who are nothing but sin. We have a sinful nature. From the very beginning of our lives, as soon as we can tell right from wrong, we choose wrong. From the kid trying to put his fork in the outlet or saying no when mom tells him to do something, to whatever it is. From that point to what we call the bigger sins. They start to lie, try to cheat. Then it gets even bigger if they don't start to wake up to the fact that this is not pleasing to God. And God never did anything like that. Jesus Himself, when He lived on the earth 33 years, no one ever accused Him of sin. But He who knew no sin, the Bible says, became sin. You think about that? When He was on that cross, He didn't just die for sin in some generic way. When He was on that cross, He actually became sin. All the sins of the world ever committed. To God, He lives in the eternal present. There's no past, present, or future with God. And all the sin to ever exist in some mysterious way that we can't really understand or explain, and yet we're told God poured out all that sin onto Him. He became sin, and then God poured out His wrath for that sin onto Jesus Christ on the cross. And if you reject that, can you at least understand why you have chosen not to go to heaven? And that the only other place to go is to go where the place that was created not for you, but for devils and the devil himself. The Antichrist, the false prophet. That's what hell was created for, and yet people choose to go there. And when they do that, they are choosing to reject the greatest of acts of love, the greatest act of love to ever be known by man. And then there's that empty tomb. The greatest rescue in human history. When He conquered sin and death and rose from the grave, He defeated your sin debt. He defeated death. He defeated the effects of sin for you and for everyone else who believes. And that is your definition of love. Be sure to visit our website at kjvbiblebelievers.com, where you can find a wealth of MP3 audio message downloads, along with additional videos, articles, and links. This message is brought to you by Bible Believers Fellowship, P.O. Box 662, Worthington, Ohio 43085. I am Greg Miller. Thank you for listening.